Good day. Thank you so very much for inviting me to be part of this very important Congress. Let me get started by sharing my screen. Thank you. I'm delighted to be part of this International Summit on Women's Health and Rights that is supported by FOGSI and the Mumbai Obstetrical and Gynecological Society. And Dr. Rishikesh Pai, thank you so very much for inviting me to be here. Today I'm going to talk about preconception to infancy. This is a subject, if any of you know me well, you know this is near and dear to my heart, and it really is a major focus for how to empower women around the globe. First, to provide a couple disclaimers, I do sit on the board of the Forum Institute. They're a nonprofit focused on women's health, specifically around the environment and children's health outcomes, very much around autism and neurodevelopmental disorders. But as I say, they're non-for-profit. I also provide lectures on well women health care. The Hologic group has sponsored some of this, and I sit on EXUS, which is a European Union group that's devoted to cervical cancer, reducing it and understanding systematic approaches. My clinical objectives are very straightforward, and for any of you who are interested, I just say email me and promise me that you will give this lecture. You can have it, just take my name off, put your name on, because I think the most important part in getting this message across is for more of us to hear it and be able to deliver it. I'm going to describe preconception to infancy, help you understand some of the basics about environmental toxicants, toxics and toxicants, not toxins. I'm always a stickler for the wording. Advocate for global certification on product safety, because I think that's what it's going to take to help all of us, and then help you understand the role of mass spectrometry and post-production testing. Preconception to infancy really is a puzzle that fits three important pieces together. And I like to say we're very well versed on two of them: well women health care and safe and respectful maternity care. We have advocated for these two for a long time. It's very important. They form the basis of empowering women. And my message in this Preconception to Infancy initiative is all about the environment. And why is that? As I like to say, it's for every woman, every time, everywhere. And it's care across the lifespan. But when we talk about well women care, we have great advice. We've got great research. Dr. ISWHR, thank you for all that you've done, all that you continue to lead within FIGO. I am always delighted to put this Well Women Care advice wheel up and show people how important it is. The United States has the Women's Preventive Services Initiative, which I launched back in 2016, and it continues to this day. It is all about well women health care, care across the lifespan. We are here just to amplify that message. We don't need to reinvent it. We've got groups that are doing a fabulous job. Within the P2I, we're here to amplify it. And likewise, when we talk about safe and respectful care, I just need to amplify the information, the knowledge, and the dedication that we already have. Back in 2021, the World Health Organization focused on together the safe and respectful maternal and newborn care. FIGO was an important part of that. We created an ethical framework for respectful maternity care. We created a childbirth Bill of Rights. We just need to amplify this message. I'm not reinventing a wheel, I'm amplifying. But as I said, there are three parts to this puzzle, and the third part is the environment. And that's where you and I come in. We have an important message to share with everybody about the environment and why we need to address it. Why have diseases increased their incidence over the last 40 years? Environment and disease, an important concept. The incidence is not based on genetics alone. There may be genetic predispositions, but what we do know is the change in environmental exposures has drastically happened in the last 40 years. Genes haven't changed over that time period. Epidemics and obesity, ADHD, asthma, environmental, dietary, behavioral change, sperm count changes, all of those are remarkable in just a short time period. We will never understand their etiology unless we understand the complexity between genes and environment and are able to address them both. If you look at just a couple graphs here, looking at the incidence in the United States on autism and developmental disabilities, it's at an increasing rate over time. The percentage of children with ADHD has continued to increase over time. And testicular cancer, breast cancer, hypospadias, and then decreasing sperm count. Again, the same kind of pattern over time. Asthma, all of these, we've seen this very marked increase that cannot be explained by genetics alone. And I always say, we've forgotten history. OBGYNs are the experts here. We know thalidomide. We know methylmercury in the 50s, diethylstilbestrol in the 70s, lead even today. And we have the endocrine disruptors from the 21st century. We are the most important voice because we've lived it, we know it, we're the experts here. And yet, sometimes we're afraid to become involved. I always say we're like ostriches. We keep our head in the sand until we have the correct answer. And because we're all a little uncomfortable with environment, we don't really have that correct answer. So I'm here to help you with it. The most important reference that I have used is the NIEHS EPA Children's Environmental Health and Disease Prevention Research Center information. NIEHS is the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences in the United States. They have summarized incredible amounts of research. In just the last 40 years, childhood leukemia has increased by 35%. That's not genes. 8.4% of children in the United States have asthma. 1 in 42, at the time of this report being published, boys, 8-year-old boys, have autism. Children are at high risk for chronic diseases. And if we look at the research that's taken place across the United States, we have these incredible research centers. They're children's centers that have specifically focused for 30 years on the environmental impact of contaminants on health. And there's some of the most important programs that we have. UC Davis, UC San Francisco, UC Berkeley, University of Southern California. We've got Iowa, Illinois, Notre Dame. We've got Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Mount Sinai. So across the entire United States, $300 million worth of research, 8 funding proposals, 46 grants. So we've got the research and their conclusions. So pardon me if I go over a number of conclusions with what I call the alphabet soup, because sometimes environment sounds like an alphabet soup. If you just look at, and I'll pick and choose some of these, we've seen associations between organophosphate pesticides, asthma, and decreased lung function. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are associated with asthma and lung function. Phthalates, think of the creams that we put on our faces, and a lot of different plastics are associated with decreased fetal growth and preterm birth. Prenatal exposure to organophosphate pesticides associated with preterm birth, shortened gestation, and autism. Latino fathers who are exposed to carcinogens, the father who's exposed to carcinogens, we see their children with an increased likelihood of leukemia. We found disturbances in the immune system, maternal immune dysfunction, and prenatal environmental exposures can result in autism spectrum disorders and metabolic conditions. And again, lead, mercury, arsenic, pesticides all have an impact on brain development, cognitive delays, ADHD, lower IQs, anxiety, changes in behavior, a whole host of things. Developmental delays. We've seen endocrine disrupting chemicals like BPA and phthalates impact childhood obesity and type 2 diabetes, puberty occurring later in life, and then dietary exposures to arsenic affect the fetal immune system. So this is the results of 30 years worth of research. The NIEHS summary is incredible for how thorough it is. We're not at the point where we're asking whether there is an effect. We know there are effects. Now we're here to share that information. We've got neurotoxic mixture of chemicals extracted from the blood of pregnant women in a study done in Germany, and they said it was bioassays that help them the most. With the high throughput studies, when you actually have a bioassay and measure and can biomonitor, you get more information. And this was a study of over 600 women in Germany. We've got 20 years of microplastic pollution, and what have we learned? Well, we know that microplastics are found in red blood cells. They're found in the feces of bottle-fed babies and individuals with irritable bowel disease. They're found in every human placenta in University of New Mexico study. And the Lancet just provided a countdown on health and plastics, which is just came out this month, which is an incredible study or summary. chemicals in the environment. We've got 70 to 100,000 chemicals in global commerce, and low-income countries now lead the world in production without research on their environmental impacts and impact on health. Again, without research on their impacted health. So I like to look at the science and say, how do we discuss it? Well, we've got what I consider aha moments that drive change. The first aha moment I like to share with people was lead in lipstick. In about 2008 in California, we got a phone call from our state legislature asking ACOG, what do you think of lead in lipstick? He said, oh shoot, lipstick's good, lead is bad. We have no policy. We had no information, no guidance to provide the state. At that point, we said, this needs to change. The second aha moment was UC San Francisco, who said, we've got to navigate the science and explain the difference between what the pharmaceutical world and clinicians are used to, that says nothing is released until we've shown that it is efficacious and safe before we expose humans. That's a standard we live by. In fact, that was the question we had with lead in lipstick. We said, well, if it's on the market, they must have shown it's safe. No. The actual information shows that no chemicals have to show efficacy. They don't have to show anything. They don't have to even show harm before on the market. They have to prove evidence of harm before we take them off the market. So it's a completely different standard. And then the third aha moment was prenatal vitamins. And this study came out in 2018. I'll go into it in a little more detail later, but showing that that there are toxic chemicals in the prenatal vitamins that we prescribe for our patients every single day. Dr. Nate Gynecology, who leads the FIGO committee, has authored these articles and has been a great resource for FIGO. So what are we asking? Well, policy reform is one. We'd like the burden to be on the manufacturing companies. We've changed our pharmaceutical world in response to thalidomide, in response to the chemical contaminations. It's not a no-risk situation, but it's a lower risk. But we've not changed the chemical industry. The burden of proof is on you and me to safeguard our patients. It's not on industry, and that's not acceptable. We have not held the supplement industry to that standard either. The burden of proof is on you and me to show that a supplement has harmful chemicals in it. It's not on the industry to prove that they're free of chemicals. We could learn from groups like the Collaboration on Health and the Environment, who said when an activity raises threats of harm to human health or the environment, we should use caution. A precautionary principle should be taken if we cannot determine direct cause and effect. So be cautious. European Union now bases their law on the precautionary principle. ACOG released a committee opinion in 2013 about the exposure to toxic environmental agents. FIGO followed in 2015 with an opinion on reproductive health and the exposure to toxic environmental chemicals. And I like to point out it was the first global opinion about women's reproductive health and exposure to environmental toxics. The air we breathe, the water we consume, the food we eat, and the products we use have contaminants. And unless we reduce the exposure for our patients and ourselves, we will have adverse outcomes in health. And then in 2021, FIGO released a statement about climate change, women's health, and why we all are the leaders here. So where does this leave us? I could look very briefly at climate change, environmental toxicants, and what we can do. The prenatal vitamin contamination is probably the most concerning for all of us since we prescribe them every day. The dietary supplements pose a real danger to patients. The current system is considered the wild, wild west. There are heavy metal contaminations of prenatal vitamins. 26 of 26 vitamins tested all contained a heavy metal: aluminum, nickel, titanium, thallium, arsenic, mercury, cadmium. Some of them didn't even carry folic acid. When they looked at the United Arab Emirates, there were heavy metal contamination of dietary supplements. And when we looked at India's growing use of dietary supplements, we've seen contamination of proteins. 70% of 36 popular protein supplements sold in India were mislabeled. and this is hitting the news your patients are reading. In the United States, we've done more studies. Every time a study comes out, we see that there are contaminants in everything that we're looking at. In 2023, Toxic Chemicals and Contaminants Determination, FIGO released a critical statement because it sets a bar for the entire world that says there's a growing list of toxic chemicals. We identified a list of them that we call P2I, and that list is in the FIGO appendix. But basically, we said our position as a clinician should educate consumers about the risks, and FIGO says certification of all prenatal vitamins should become the standard of care. They need to have post-production assessment with mass spectrometry to show that they are clean. And that's the only way it can be done. It can't be a vitamin company saying they're clean. So can we improve our guidance? We sure can. Is it possible to measure toxicants in urine and blood? Yes. And we can guide patients that way. Is it possible to buy home test kits of chemicals? It sure is. Amazon had them, I think, for, let me see what it was, $280 for PFAS exposure test, so you can get it on Amazon. Is it possible to measure toxicants in consumer products and determine which ones are contaminants that can harm health? Yes, it is. But we need to be doing that. There is a company called Agilent Technology that has mass spectrometry that is available to do this testing. We're now using the NIEHS standard of chemical testing. So we can translate the science, we can advocate for change, and we can educate. And that's why I'm here. We want to be able to educate everybody about why the change needs to happen. But what are our solutions? Certainly, I will always talk about reform at our government level, at our health Minister of Health level, but we've been working on reforms for many, many years, and we still are seeing chemical exposures, and that's not adequate. So my solution is empower our patients. Help women understand this information, share it, and empower them to make decisions that will improve their health and the health of their families. We can use biomarkers for clinical care. There's a great study looking at biomarkers in clinical practice, and they said the characteristics may represent risk factors for diseases or outcomes, and they may be indicators for disease progression. The quandary is, how do we use them? Will it, what change is enough? Can we see a test change patients' behavior? We know in a large-scale study in Puerto Rico, we saw that when patients were told what their phthalate levels were and counseled on how to decrease them, they did. We know with organic products, we can measure pesticides in somebody's bloodstream, have them change their diet either by purchasing organic or rinsing properly, and we can see that their pesticides drop. So we can use it to guide patients. And we're experts with it. Look at the sepsis protocol. Look at Crohn's disease. Look at the ICU and cardiac enzymes. We use biomarkers all the time. We know how to do this. We can do it. Can we measure toxicants? We sure can. This was a summary that came out of Australia, where these two physicians said, we need to look at the elephant in the room. Patients are very comfortable with biomarkers. They're very comfortable with their apps on their phones. And there's a growing body of evidence that suggests that we've got chemicals that harm health. So we've got that evidence. There are 40,000 smartphone applications. 60% of mobile phone users have downloaded a health app. And now we can compute and tell, we can do it with genetics, 23andMe. About 5 years ago, I said, I need the environmental equivalent of 23andMe so that for $99 or $100, somebody can get the whole spectrum of chemical assay. We're able to do that now. So the widespread adoption of information technology makes it very clear. Clinicians have to be receptive. Our patients want to know more. We can draw an easy blood or urine sample on them and counsel them on their chemical contaminants and how to decrease them. So tomorrow's health professional is here today, and that's all of you here in this room. Clinicians are important. We play a role in identifying environmental exposures. And I'm here with my team to teach you how to interpret the results. We know what the harms are. In fact, we've created an entire handbook on many of the different common contaminants. One that we have available for anybody going through the P2I curriculum so that you can see what the chemicals are and understand how to different. And there isn't a standard practice model that engages in continual education about environment. This is what P2I does. What are the challenges? Well, we have environmental chemical assessment has been overlooked in the past, not so any longer. It's complex science. The inadequacies around the globe on chemical regulation and very inconsistent interpretations on environmental medication. And we've got education that hasn't been enough. I'm here to create an entire group of clinicians. I call them the environmental health leaders of today. That you can take this information, be able to share it with others. We've got about a 12-part curriculum for people to go to. We do know that there are constraints on your time, but we believe that with you being an expert in your area and being able to advertise and test people, it will be beneficial for you and your patients. There are whole new developments in exposure assessment. How do we practice health risk assessment with epidemiologic studies? Well, in the past, we had to use zip codes. We had to use a city address to know if there was a harmful effect. That's not adequate. Now we can use a blood or a urine test and tell people if there's a problem. With actual measurements of chemicals, the quality is stronger than when models are relied upon. Biomonitoring can be very, very important in this field. And as I said at the beginning, this is all about empowering women. We can't have women say, oh, I'm waiting for the regulatory industry to clean up their act. It's not happening. It's not happening fast enough. This is about helping women understand what they can do to change in their families' lives so that they are eating cleaner produce, making healthier decisions, and looking for something as simple as a P2I label on a vitamin or on any product that shows it's been tested and is clean of any of the contaminants that we're worried about a woman who's pregnant. I like to say, if we say something's healthy enough for a pregnant woman, it's healthy for all women, all men, everybody in our families. So our emphasis is on preconception to infancy because we're saying if it's safe enough for our moms, it's truly safe for everyone. So it's really about empowering women. There's a study looking at exposures to studies in homes. They use that information and women were able to guide their families. So why do we need the guidance? Well, P2I science and care for healthier beginnings. We want to protect pregnancy from pesticides, and we have to be prepared. Amplify the message, create global train the trainers, know what the research tells us. You tell me what else you need, and how do we measure bioburden? So what can you do? Well, recommend healthy choices for your patients. You can measure bioburdens for your patients. Establish a committee in your society, in your hospital, in your region. Give this lecture to your hospital and your colleagues. Advocate for safe chemicals with a European Union standard. Reduce your carbon footprint. Reduce plastics. Don't ever heat in plastics in the microwave, ever. Get rid of those slick Teflon pans. Use organic or use a clean rinse for produce, and we've got clean rinses that are available. Know your exposures. Purify water and air in the home, and look for P2I seal of approval. Get certified through our program and teach others. There are a couple apps that you can use. One is called Safety Nest, so share that with your patients. Another, this is one of my favorite, Clearia app is fabulous. You just hold the Clearia app to a label and it will tell you what's in it. And then EWG, if you just Google EWG, they can talk with you about water filters, air filters, and the like. To conclude, it was Ban Ki-moon, the 8th Secretary General of the United Nations, who said, saving our planet, lifting people out of poverty, advancing economic growth, these are one and the same fight. We must connect the dots between climate change, water scarcity, energy shortages, global health, food security, and women's empowerment. Solutions to one problem must be solutions to them all. So to return to the beginning, we're talking about well women health care, amplifying that message. We're talking about safe and respectful maternity care, amplifying that message. But you are my messengers about the environment, and I hope to see you take this on and become one of my environmental health leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jeanne Conry, for the beautiful talk on preconception to infancy, a global environmental perspective.